So we start with Adam today. It says, hello Abe, since my last submission I've created 2 projects, one for a bootcamp freelance project for a AA studio based in my local area, and a personal project I've worked on over a summer break during free time between the studio work and just summer leisure. 2 projects to focus on are Naraka, the Trickster Clothing, and Thornodra, the Sorceress of Moribane. Says, I feel like making a second upload of my recent project, The Sorceress, purely because I want to present it a little bit better, have more breakdowns, show the high poly too. I would also ideally like to make an animation which works in game engine and is supposed to be a game-ready character. Are there any other things you recommend to add? Most of it to a project. I'm sure you mentioned it already, but if you have any feedback on lighting composition, okay, let's take a look. There we go. So this is Adam Anderson, and he mentioned that he did 2 new characters that he wants me to focus on. It's I'm guessing this Thorndra. And which was the other one? Naraka, Trickster Clothing. This one. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Naraka, Trickster, Torso Clothing. Okay, nice. Nice. Okay, interesting. So, let's see. We use a bunch of different softwares. We use Marble Designer, Photoshop, Substance, Blender, Unreal. At the first glance, it looks interesting, my friend. I like the complexity of it, the composition, but there's a couple of elements that I don't really think are working as much. And I'm not sure if you were following a concept. You probably were. But one of the things that I noticed is the belt buckle, okay? So the first belt buckle that I see right here, and let me take this into the Krita so we can draw a little bit on top of it. There we go. There we go. So this belt buckle, if it's supposed to be metal, it's a huge belt buckle, right? Like it's a very, very big belt buckle. And this is going to be a little bit complicated to rig and deform if we need to. I've never seen a belt buckle this big. Usually the biggest I've seen is something like this. So I do think that this one is going a little bit too big in terms of the size. I also don't love the fact that the material looks very noisy, right? Like the gold, it doesn't really look like a gold belt buckle. It actually looks like aluminum or something like that. And it's not because of the color of the metal. A lot of people think that it's the color that really changes. It's more about the roughness. Gold, at least some of the ornamentation that we see with gold, tends to be a little bit smoother, less rough, less noisy with this thing. And this looks, you know, a little bit too noisy. This is a very common issue with belts, guys. A very, very common issue. And I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a cloth belt, in which case it makes a little bit more sense. But if it's supposed to be a leather belt, one of the things that you want to do is you want to keep the belt a little bit more straight. See how right now it's curving with the shape of the character? That makes it look very weak in comparison to what we would normally expect to see on a leather belt, okay? So those are elements that I don't particularly like. Now, this one right here, this sort of like I don't know, banner, flap, scarf or something. I feel it's a little bit too short. I've never seen a scarf this short, and this is going to fall over. Like, there's nothing holding this. You would probably need to add some sort of like element or thing to keep it tight to the rest of the cloak. I would try to do that. Now, I know that you did this inside of Marvelous, and Marvelous has this tendency to make things very thin. I'm not sure if you were using the trick that I showed you before. This is on the Marvelous course, of course, but this trick is using the over-under trick to give these things a little bit more thickness. So usually the border, and you can see here on my shirt, usually the border of the shirt right in this area gets a little bit more, gets a little bit more thickness to it. And you're usually going to see that in multiple places on this type of like elements. Same for this armor, for this bracer. Like I would like to see a little bit more differentiation on the borders of the element to really like push it a little bit higher in terms of the detail. The textures are fine. Like again, this for a AA game, and I think that's what you mentioned, this is okay, this is fine, that we can expect this kind of like quality and level. But if you can push it just a little bit further up, you're gonna get such a better result, okay? So keep that in mind, my friend. But that's a good project. And I mean, just the fact that you're doing this for a studio, that's already a big win, to be honest. And then we have this one right here, Thorndra, Sorceress of Moribane. Nice, very fantasy-like. Looks a little bit like Souls style, so I like that. I like the headdress. Again, I feel it's a little bit noisy, and I'm gonna talk about something in just a couple of seconds. These are some nice shots. I like the cloth right there. Ooh, I love this render, man. You did a great job on this render. Love this nice soft gold light coming from the left. Very, very nice. Okay, let's take a look at some of the big shots right here. Nice. A little bit heavy on the wireframe. Not the end of the world, but you can see the density that we have, for instance, on the hands. We really don't need that density, to be honest. And I would like to see a wireframe of the whole character, because I'm not seeing the wireframe on the dress, so I'm not sure if it's going to be able to deform and move properly. So there's a couple of things that we are missing here, and I want to talk about form first, and then we're going to talk about texture. So in terms of form, fingers, my friends. Fingers are really, really, really important. I know that rigging a character can be a little bit complicated, but you can solve this quite a bit if you work on this from the sculpting side of like elements, right? So the thumb, right? Right now, this thumb, this silhouette, let me grab a different color. This silhouette on the thumb looks very weak, very soft, very weak. And I know gloves tend to do that, but one of the things that we can do is we can try to push a little bit more silhouette, right, on the fingers, so they look a little bit more interesting, okay? So I want to see a fold that's a little bit more aggressive on this area. Same for this. See how they look kind of like sausages? So I want to have a little bit of a harder edge on the areas where the character is bending this. Having a couple of wrinkles on this area, having a couple of like damage, that's definitely going to help the leather read a little bit nicer. Check the live stream that I did with the Plague Doctor's mask. I showed some leather techniques there for that mask. It's specifically to make it look like that. The cloth looks fine. Again, everything else looks quite nice, to be honest. Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. Now, one thing that I do recommend, my friend, and this is a very important topic. We're probably gonna have a short about this one. A very common mistake that we do when making any type of texture is that we like to add detail everywhere, like here, right? We have this golden sort of like crown for this creepy character, and we have detail everywhere. You want to try to find something that we refer to as rest areas. Areas where there's not a lot of stuff going on. For instance, here, we could leave a couple of areas free of this tarnish, free of this rust, free of this element, so that we can really appreciate the golden effect or the golden element of this particular crown. This is something that I learned from Vitaly Vulgarov. You guys have definitely seen that guy. Vitaly Vulgarov. There we go. So back in the day, he went and gave a... This is something that I learned from Vitaly Bulgarov. Back in the day, he went to Monomon and he showed some of his work. And one of the things he talked about was that, like, whenever you're doing a very complex element, you usually want to have certain areas where things are a little bit flatter or there's not a lot of details, so that our brain has a little bit of a chance to rest, right? To process the information and to be able to appreciate the rest of the elements. So when you're doing, especially like mechanical stuff, right? He specializes on that. You definitely want to leave a little bit of that area so that it's easier to process the information. That's what we need to do right here. Like, we don't want to have this like rust and tarnish everywhere on the character, because if we do that, then it's very difficult to appreciate what's really going on. And then once we have those empty areas, of course we can go in and add specific effects or specific elements in some of the areas to really push the rest of the element forward. That way, especially when seen from afar, you're going to be able to better appreciate what we're seeing on the character itself. Okay, but it's a good project, man. In general, I really like this this project right here. Awesome. So that's it, Adam. I hope that helps you. This is definitely an improvement, especially from the previous one. See, Adam is an excellent example of artistic growth, because he showcased, or he shared his portfolio several months ago, and one of the characters that he showed was this one right here. And I was very intense on the critique on this one. Of course, I tried not to be mean, but I mentioned, hey, we're missing a lot of form. Textures are not great here. We need to improve materials. And he took that. He took that, as I mentioned, and used that not as a way to feel demotivated, but rather as a way to really improve. And look at that. This is really, really a big improvement from that previous one. So imagine what Adam's going to be able to achieve. Adam, you're going to be able to do amazing, amazing things in just a couple more months. This is definitely the right track. Keep doing it, keep pushing, and keep creating some awesome stuff, my friend.